Yeah, how's it going? So there's an election coming up on the 8th of June, and it's my first time actually being able to vote in a general election. I've voted in like local stuff, I've voted in the EU referendum, but it's my first time in a general election, and I figured I'd make a video talking about politics anyway, because politics is something that I do have an interest in to an extent, and obviously it's kind of important, and so hopefully I'll be able to help a little bit with people getting into it, because I feel like a lot of people, if you've not really followed it before, you'll see bits on the news, but you won't really know where to start because there's just so much of it. So start here, start with this video, and I'll put some links in the description with sort of information A, that I've used, and B, information to do with the elections coming up, so that you can sort of read up on that as well. If I help one person, then this video is worth it. That's my sort of attitude. So the main parties in England are Conservatives, Labour, Lib Dems, UKIP and the Greens. Sort of also in the big parties thing is Plaid Cymru? I probably just butchered the pronunciation of that, very sorry. And the SNP, Northern Ireland has a whole different, I don't even really know about Northern Ireland, but I don't live in Northern Ireland, I don't vote in Northern Ireland, I also don't in Wales or Scotland, so if you're from one of those places, sorry, but I can't really help. So you have the left wing and the right wing. It's kind of like a spectrum. So from the sort of right wing, which is more of a capitalist ideology, and the left is more of a sort of socialist. The political parties, those main five, sort of fit in roughly about here on the scale. But, obviously this isn't to scale, like it's not like mathematically they're moved along, but it's sort of a general idea. So there's a tendency for the Greens and UKIP to appeal to the more extreme ends of the scale, so the Greens for the extreme left and UKIP for the extreme right. Not meant as in like extremist, just people down that end of the scale. And in contrast to that, generally Labour and the Conservatives tend to try and appeal more to the centre, and have been moving that way a little bit, so that they can have a more mainstream universal appeal, and they can try and get voters from the other side to come across. Which obviously if you're at the two ends, you know, it's more difficult. So as they've moved in, those parties have risen and have been taking some of their votes, meaning that the two big parties have to now try and appeal back to the fringes again. Lib Dems tend to sit in the middle, that way they can critique and support different parties on different policies, but also can end up in a coalition with the Conservatives, for example, but equally could have chosen Labour at that time if they'd wanted to, you know, so they sit in the middle and they do their thing. One interesting thing that I did read while I was doing my research was that UKIP are putting forward approximately half of the amount of standing in the election as they did in the last election. The numbers dropped from like 620 something down to about 300, meaning that they aren't taking votes from the Conservatives, because that way all of the votes down this end will go to the Conservatives, who are in favour of the current Brexit plan, whereas you know, the Lib Dems want a new referendum, Labour want to negotiate about different things, and then the Greens don't want Brexit at all. So that's quite an interesting fact in terms of the tactics. I also wanted to look at the demographics for voting. So traditionally, class was the sort of dividing line. Conservatives would be more middle class and upper class, and the Labour would be more working class. However, that is no longer actually a factor in the same way, because both middle class and working class vote majority Conservative, then Labour. What's being called the new divide is age, where Labour have the majority of votes from 18 to 34-year-olds, whereas then Conservatives have the majority from 34 up. Interestingly, with every 10 years that someone gets older from 34, they're 8% more likely to vote Conservative. There's not a whole lot to say about the gender gap, but the Labour vote for women is higher than the male vote, whereas the Conservatives is pretty much the same from male to female. Education level is also something that is looked at with demographics, whereby the higher level of education someone has achieved in the UK, the more likely they are to vote for Labour or Lib Dem, which was quite interesting. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're smarter if you vote for those parties, or that you're not if you don't. Do your own research in terms of the upcoming election. I'm going to leave a load of links in the description to do with the research that I've done today, the research for the demographics as well, and also a link to each of the manifestos for the 5 parties that I mentioned. So go and have a look at those, and and go out and vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, I'm not going to tell you what to do, except go out and vote on June the 8th, and if you're not registered, then make sure you do for next time, because it's really fucking important. Bye.
So while this was a super serious video about politics and how important it is and everything, I do have to include a little piece of video from Comic Con at the end, because Margaret was really sad that I didn't include either of the clips of her shoes from on Sunday. So here's Margaret's shoes. I hope you enjoy, and it makes your experience of Comic Con so much better.
I'm pointing!